We were enjoying our typical family supper at the kitchen table, just Maria and I, since our kids are grown and out of the house. The meal was a simple chicken stir-fry. I made dinner today because she had something going on at the gallery. She worked and was late getting home. Maria normally gets home before me, but not tonight. We determined long ago that family supper was crucial not just for Maria and me, but also for us to spend quality time with our children. I was about I was about to refill my water glass when my 45-year-old wife muttered something I didn't immediately understand. I was distracted by an issue at work and wasn't giving her my whole attention, so what she said didn't make. Thus, I probably misread her. I watched her staring at me carefully, waiting for my reaction. Maria regarded my face with an odd expression. "I've been seeing Eric," she swiftly replied. "You know the new. I know you met Eric Johnson, the physical trainer at work, and I know who he is," answered, trying to make sense of this. Suddenly, I had a strange feeling in my stomach. "So you're seeing him, what does?" Maria took a big breath. "We've become pals, Jack. I've been eating lunch with him, and after work, let's go out. I've been seeing him, meeting him, going out with him, sometimes seeing him going out with him." Christ, Maria. "What are you saying? Me, you're having an affair?" Was a joke, and I waited impatiently for her to dispute my outlandish remark. But she examined me intently and answered. Sure. I snickered and, in surprise, shouted out, "Yes, what are you having?" "Oh, Jack, this cannot be true." I began to speak, but nothing came out. "Just listen, Jack," she added hastily. "I realize this is a shock, and I know what you're thinking, but it's not like that. A negative thing, really. I simply had to tell you about Eric because I do love and respect you, and I always will. I had to tell you because I care about you. Can you believe it? Cut me off. You've always been my number one guy, and marrying you was the best thing that ever happened to me. I love you, and I'll never give you up. I love you so much that I couldn't go on." Seeing him without saying anything to you, my eyes fixed onto her face, holding out hope that this talk was some kind of prank, or maybe it was a setup. Maria loves me as much as I love her. She couldn't be having an affair. When she refused to withdraw her comment, I tried to figure out what was going on. "I don't know what to say, Maria." Absolutely bewildered. "Please don't feel bad, Jack," she implored. "Yes, I've been seeing Eric, but he's only a friend. Think about it, honey. My relationship with him hasn't harmed our love or our relationship." I was still reeling from this unexpected turn of events. "How can you claim you love me?" "I do love you," she said passionately. "We have a beautiful marriage, which they'll always treasure, but I need to have other men. I've never complained about you having male friends," so I responded. "I know that, and I appreciate it. I usually enjoy being with you, honey, but when I'm with Eric, it's different. He's a lot younger than us and thinks differently about matters like this. I have to admit that sometimes he makes me feel like a teenager again." Stop crying. I wanted to be reasonable, but I suddenly lost my patience and had to stop her love story. "Please don't give me the details of your affair. I don't want to know how you feel with him or what you do behind my back." Maria saw the message. I started cautiously. "I'm sorry, honey. I know it's a sore topic right now, but I want to be honest. Please don't hate me. Yes, I'm seeing Eric, but don't worry about anyone knowing. We've been very covert, so no one knows. We both made sure of it. You never had any suspicions, and neither did anyone else. I thought it would make me feel better, but it doesn't. I just wanted you to know that we are not disrespecting you in public, just in private. I thought, please tell me, Jack and Eric will never take your place. He's a fun young guy to hang out with for a while, and he gets something from me that you never noticed. You'll always come first in everything, and please believe that I never meant to. I really apologize if I've upset you. I couldn't keep keeping it from you. Being with Eric is only a minor favor I need you to allow me." I was fuming at her easygoing attitude. She treats him like he's just a nice guy, and she provides him something I'll never be able to match. My face was flushed with fury, and my eyes glared at her. I attempted to lash out verbally at her, saying some very terrible things. Things I spat furiously before I could stop myself. She let me continue my rant, which I suppose I deserve. I couldn't stand it any longer and sprang up so quickly that the chair I was sitting on tumbled over backwards. I spun around and marched angrily out of the room. "Where are you going?" my wife said. "Gonna take a few minutes to process this," I said. "Give me a few minutes and I'll be back." I told her I charged out. As she whimpered, I stomped out onto the huge deck in the back of our house, facing, breathing heavily. I was outraged at the disrespect she was showing me. I beat the railing in frustration before trying to calm down. I'm normally very even-tempered, but tonight, listening to my wife's confession of her adultery, I was losing control. The ability to stay stoic and in control of my emotions has served me well as a manager many times. When engaging with a stressed coworker, my patient and cool-headed attitude has helped me resolve many situations. The technique of going straight in and speaking truthfully helped them calm down and find a path out of the. But this was different because it was personal. I couldn't believe my middle-aged wife, who I'd been married to for nearly 18 years, told me she's having an affair with a guy she works with. I'd met him and thought he was. Arya introduced him as a nice acquaintance, and I stupidly trusted her. Now I know. My mind was spinning with unpleasant visions of what I had just heard, so I took some deep breaths and attempted to calm down. I had to think, and I couldn't do that since I was so upset. I knew that if I walked back into the kitchen and started shouting at her, it would only lead to a bitter argument. I knew that if I started swearing at her, it would make matters worse in the long run. In the long run, I've never been one to scream and shout, and if I knew Maria shouting and swearing would just make my wife's stubbornness would not help me find out what I needed to know to get her to stop, so I had to think carefully about how to deal with this. I had to employ all of my faculties and force myself to face the situation calmly and rationally. Returning to my objective, unemotional managerial persona, I needed to learn more about her affair in order to analyze data statistically. It took another 10 minutes for my blood pressure to drop, my heart to cease beating, and I went back into the house to confront my unfaithful wife, Maria, who was still there. Kitchen table, fidgeting anxiously with her water glass. She looked up as I entered with a frightened and cautious look on her face. Her expression, she waited for me to sit back down. I started to respond, but I put up my hand to cut her short. I said in an even tone, "My love, I never expected this tonight, Maria. I'm astonished and quite upset right now." "Oh, Jack, you don't have to be." I put my hand out again to stop her. "What's your plan?" "Now I knew you'd be upset, and I don't blame you. I just wanted you to know what was going on, and I didn't want to keep you in the dark." I cursed before I could stop. "So what did that guy say when you told him you were going to inform me?" "Well, we both thought it was for the best. That's what he said. Not quite despite what you think. Eric is not a bad man. I know he feels bad about our sneaking around. We both do, and he doesn't want to screw up my marriage." I was going to challenge her to quit her affair when she stabbed the knife even further with a resolute look. She groaned. "This is hard, but now that you know what's going on, I want to keep seeing him, not too often, mind you. Now and again, and of course after work hours." I was stunned at the audacity of this woman and couldn't believe what We sat in quiet for a time, the atmosphere dense with tension. My wife stated with a painful look on her face, "I'm sorry, honey. I know this is difficult for you, but he's a truly good guy. Linked on some level and have a lot of fun together. I admit that I'm into him, but it won't harm us at all." "You gotta be kidding, right? I don't think cutting off touch with him will change anything between us. It hasn't yet, and I'm gonna make sure it won't happen in the future. You probably don't agree, but he's been a good bud." "Why to me?" "Not appear like it now, but I think he's been beneficial for our marriage. You may think I'm crazy, but try to think. Jack, have you noticed how pleased I've been lately? You used to accuse me of being bitter last year. Well, I admit that we were squabbling. Our marriage was stressful, and our love life growing stale. We were in a rut when I first started seeing him. What a great story. He's a marriage counselor." She disregarded my sarcasm, and since we became friends, Eric helped me straighten up my attitude. "I appreciate it, and I know you do as well. I guess we're more than just friends now. I know we can work this out, Jack. I love you and want to grow old with you and be with you forever." I was surprised to hear you say those words, so I know you didn't mean it when you said you were ending the affair and you were asking me to accept that. "You're going to keep him on your side, of course, and it will end eventually," she assured me. "Eric and I have very different interests, and he is much younger than me. Could never have the type of long-term committed relationship where both people have strong feelings for each other. It's unlikely that this will change in the short term. I think you're mistaken." If you think otherwise, please. Jack, I'm telling you the truth. Nothing between us will change. She gave me a soothing paddle. On the wrist, I'm still the same loving wife I've always been, and we still have a wonderful connection. I enjoy making love to you and always will, as this has been the case for the previous few months. Have you noticed anything different? Acknowledge that she was true. I never thought about why our relationship had recently gotten so sexual when we first started. Dating Marie and I had a very busy love life. We were just as affectionate, but as the kids grew older and needed to suit their busy lifestyle, our love life slowed down quite a bit, even after they left for college. Never got back to the frequency it was before, and I didn't think it was a big problem. I believed most married couples are. Age didn't have sex every night, but with what I've learned, I know that Maria was true. We gotten back on track. I couldn't deny I was thrilled that we were now intimate several times a week, if not more. It was the same frequency we enjoyed when the kids were little. When she questioned if I'd observed any bad influence on our love life while she was seeing Eric, the reality is I didn't detect any bad affects on our love life while I was seeing Maria. Despite seeing Eric from time to time, I made sure I was always there for you. You have to confess, we have a lot of sex for people our age. And I love it as much as you do. I'm here for you anytime you need me. We both adore each other. I know that when he's with you, Eric never gets in the picture. He's merely a minor part of my life. We have an 18-year-old. After a year of marriage, I want to continue that I questioned incredulously of. Of course I love you, but how can I stay married to an unfaithful woman like you? She scowled. Empathetic expression stiffened. I'm not a cheater, she asserted clearly through tight lips. I'm astonished you would insult me like that. This is the first time I've ever cheated on you, just so you know. I've never been with a man. I said, that's fantastic, but how do I know you haven't just replaced me with a younger model? I mean, you were simply waiting to see how things went with Eric, and you kept me as a backup. It's not like that at all, Jack. She insisted. You're my spouse, and I do. I love you, honey. Never leave me. It's just that every now and then I want to be with Eric. Not all the time, mind you. All I want is to get this strange craving out of my system for good. Just a little time to accomplish something. You'll never have to worry about it, and it won't affect us as it hasn't before. For the past few months, I sat there for a few excruciating minutes as my wife babbled on. I couldn't believe she thought relationship wouldn't change now that I knew she was cheating. My mind was racing with terrible pictures of. After a while, my mind returned to reality, and I listened as she kept rationalizing her actions. Jack, I believe our relationship will be healthier in the long run. I've been more calm and upbeat lately, and I've been more open in the bedroom. You must have noticed how much better our love life has been. I've never turned you down, and I don't intend to. I've also enabled you to do some extra things you've wanted to do. Years, they'll let you do whatever you want now that I've been with Eric. I've been able to fully express the physical part of me, so whatever drawbacks you think I've missed, I'm sure you'll agree with Jack on this one. I did notice, and it upset me. Our love life used to be fairly conservative. Enjoy a few new things, and I wasn't complaining. Mariah is a nice woman and a generous partner. We both received what we required, and I was certainly satisfied. But I'd be lying if I didn't notice that Maria had become a dynamo in the bedroom during the last few months. I figured it was because the kids weren't there or something. Maybe I'm a better partner now that I see it was her time with the young boy from work that was getting her thrilled. It's strange how she believed the truth would excite me when in fact it was really sad. I always felt lucky to marry her. When we met, Maria was a single woman a few years older than me with 2 children. I was attracted to her and we got along well right away. It was her second marriage and mine first. I was thrilled to be in a relationship with such a charming and intellectual woman, and people used to joke that I was marrying an older woman, but I liked her and her kids, and I never bothered about her first husband being a deadbeat who left. When we married shortly after they had their second child, I adopted her children and reared them as my own. I, the fact, was not their biological father. They've both grown up to be decent young people, and I'm proud of them now after 18 years of marriage. She dropped this on me. Say something, Jack. She was looking at my face, and I could sense she wanted me to say something. You appear sad and offended. I'm sorry you feel that way. I just wish to make things easy for you. I know you still care for me, and I know you have needs, so let me help you feel better, honey. You'll always be my number one. She grinned and approached me, swinging her hips in a way that normally. Please don't worry about anything. I'm here for you. Let me know how I can help you, sweetie. I'm sure we can. When she began to sit on my lap, I nudged her away. She gave me a hurt face but did not push it. Without warning, I got up and left the room. She was taken off guard and just had time to shout out, "Wait," before I was out the door and into my car. As I drove away, I spotted her at the doorway with her hands covering her face. I had to get out. Before I did something I'd regret, it was 10 minutes before I realized I was just going about in circles. About doing the usual angry, bitter spouse thing and going to a pub and getting drunk. There was a little local. I turned the corner, parked, sat down, got a drink, and attempted to clear my mind. I decided to acquire all of the facts tonight. Maybe it will help me with my future decisions later. I drove back home with a goal. When I came back in the door, Maria was talking on her cell phone. She appeared shocked to see me and murmured urgently into her phone as she saw me enter the room and said, "I have to go." I suspected she was speaking. I knew her partner would be astonished, but I forced myself to remain calm and determined to accomplish what I needed to do. What that sharp bartender informed me, I returned to my seat, and there was my coffee cup still cold. Maria sat across. Jack began to say something to me with a serious expression on her face before I cut her. "Let me talk. I'm not sure what I want to hear, but I suppose I need to know how your affair began. I hope it will. Help me deal with it," I begged her. "So Maria, how long have you been betraying me?" Maria let out a sigh. She must have believed it wasn't too long. She revealed that we'd been friends for a while, but it didn't get physical until a few months ago. She told me how his words made her feel important, she claimed, and it let her explore her feelings. She took a big breath as if telling me this story was a great load off her mind. "So where do we proceed from here? You just admitted to lying and cheating on me for months. How do you think I feel about my cheating wife? Some young guy, not much older than our children, and I were in the dark about everything you think I should. Thank you for being so clever." "No, Jack," she reached across the table and held my hand. I tensed up but didn't move away even though I was crushed. I loved her. "Please comprehend I'm ashamed for fooling you," she added, "and I hate that I didn't want you to know about Eric, because we've been so private about our relationship. To know about us, I was so ashamed of what I was doing and scared you'd guess when I first returned home after meeting him. I felt terrible and swore I'd never do it again." Eric was quite supportive of my predicament. He never pressured me to continue. He left it up to me, and he was content to only see me periodically. We both agreed that I didn't want to ruin my marriage that had transformed. So I withdrew my hand away from hers and glared at her no matter how horrible I behaved. I knew I loved her. "Eric's a fine person, and he'll be a terrific catch for a lucky girl so me. But he can never." I told him all the time that we'd never be more than friends with benefits, and he agreed. He said he was really fond of me, but felt the same way as long as we didn't raise any suspicions at work. I knew I could definitely continue having a relationship with him, and no one would know, yet utterly ignoring him while our coworkers are. When colleagues learned we were friends, they would start asking questions I didn't want to answer, so we still had lunch once in a while to be normal, but we never let on that we were anything more than acquaintances. Helen and other colleagues even join us occasionally at lunch. I know they never suspected anything I spat out. I lost my calm for a second, and Maria gave me a mournful smile and nodded her head. "Yeah, I was clever all right. On the surface, I was a faithful wife with a fantastic job, lots of friends, and a good traditional marriage. But inside I knew it was a lie. I had to face my guilt. I always considered of myself as an honest person and a nice wife. My fault. Behavior made me feel like I was letting you down, and I began to hate myself for fooling you. Our marriage is sacred to me and has always been the most essential element of my life. What I had with Eric was only a transient scenario. I care about him, but my feelings for him are only a shadow of what I feel for you." This is where my lack of integrity began to upset me to the point where I was getting jaded about my existence. Regardless of how I handled things, I was losing my virtue. Regarding my self-respect, I've realized that I'm not the person I thought I was, and the answer is to quit cheating. I know it seems harsh, but I'm not sure I can do that right now. Maria remarked that I like to think I could just drop Eric and things between us would just go back to normal, Jack. I doubt that's true. You claimed you were happy together. We've raised two amazing kids and have gone through some of the worst phases of married life. The toughest part of married life is that we both have fantastic occupations and have made a life together with Laura and Peter. We've raised two lovely kids and gone through some of most hard times. Now that we're out of the house, we have an opportunity to enjoy our time together in a way I haven't been able to before. If you love me as you say you do, come back to be my devoted wife and give up that. It shouldn't be an issue, jerk. She inhaled deeply and gave me a worried look. I used to love you, Jack, but now I'm not sure. I've seen another side of life. Recently have learned a lot about myself and my needs. I'm not sure I can go back to how things were. I've tried to be. I've always been a loving wife to you, but being with Eric has opened my eyes to other alternatives that I angrily pulled. I try to keep my hand away from yours, but I couldn't. You can't stop looking at him. You admire his youth, don't you? I was nice enough to marry and support you and your children for all these years, but some young. He comes along later in life, and I'm not good enough anymore. It's not that. Honey, I've always said you're the best. I could have asked for a husband and father, but after so many years of marriage, I've changed, and we both have neither of them. We are still the same as when we first married, which is not a bad thing. It is simply the natural growth of two individuals who have lived together for many years. I scowled at her, unable to speak without losing control. Speaking, Maria stated, I don't want to hurt you, Jack. I honestly don't. I know you may. We may not believe it right now, but it is true that we will remain together, and nothing will change between us. Despite feeling awful for your feelings, I'm not content with my right now. I have a great spouse who I love very much, and two wonderful children who adore and respect you. I have a male friend who I regard as an opportunity for pleasure and excitement. He is a nice young man who makes me feel things. I haven't felt like this since I was a teenager. I hope you understand how I feel and that you love me enough to allow me this favor, I said under my breath. If she heard me, she didn't say whatever, she just kept talking. It's not a bad thing, Jack. Just remember I'm always there for you and you can count on me. But I prefer things to stay the same for a bit longer. Not forever, just till I complete exploring these new experiences. It'll finish with Eric and go back to being yours solely, which is what I want for us. Just give me a little time to settle down. I hope you can appreciate how honest I am. I don't want anything else of you. Let me have this one final secret. I promise you I'll make it up to you. You'll never lack for anything. Always be your devoted wife. No one will ever know about the little time I spend away from you. Just give me a little support this one problem, and it will repay you for the rest of your life. This conversation was becoming worse. By the minute she initially told me about her affair, I was caught off guard. We started our routine, a quick chat over dinner made me feel wonderful about my marriage. I went from being a joyful husband to feeling melancholy about my wife. He used to love me and now has a younger lover who is possibly more gorgeous than me. It took me a few minutes to, well, this was a lot to take in. I believed I could convince her to listen to reason and quit this affair now. Evident she had no intention of quitting it, she simply needed me too. You've been lying for months, I never suspected anything. Now you acknowledged all the lies and infidelity and swear to keep me as your husband, but you've lied to both me and our kids, friends, and everyone else. How can I ever trust you again? I'll never be able to trust you again. How do I know you won't simply change your mind about Eric or someone else you meet in the future and replace? Maria snorted in irritation because she realized I had a point. It was the truth. She was now a certified liar. Nothing she claimed could be trusted. She glanced back at me with her eyes. Seemed like she wanted to argue my assertion, but I knew I was telling the truth. I would never do that. And you know, she finally told me you have a lot of nerve. I told her harshly, acting all entitled and pompous, tossing your affair in my face. Why shouldn't I just get rid of you? I don't want a cheating wife, and I never did. I should simply divorce. If I believed those nasty words would sting, I was mistaken. Mariah's visage softened. Mariah talked to me with unexpected tenderness, her tone bearing an edge she hadn't employed before. I know this is difficult right now, she said, trying not to look condescending. Divorce may not be in your best interest. Interest? Why can't I at least preserve my pride? I said, annoyed. A divorce would damage me. Poorly, and you too, honey. At least I wouldn't have to put up with your affair any longer. That may be true, she shrugged. Indifferently, but I don't think you'd be happy obtaining a divorce. Neither would we. Her eyes latched on my face in a stronger tone, and she stated that because we live in a no-fault state, it'll probably wind up with half of everything, including the house, savings, and our retirement fund, because you adopted Laura and Peter. You will be compelled to contribute to their college education. There is also alimony because I don't make. The court will require you to assist me in a reasonable manner based on half of my earnings from the gallery. May come to quite a handsome sum. She and her young lover had worked out that you'd clean me out in the divorce. A statement I surely don't want to hear. I want to keep living with you and loving you the same as before, but if left me in a divorce, you'd be on the hook for quite an amount, but I'd still be able to visit Eric whenever I wanted, which I know would be awkward for you. It would be better if we just kept things as they are, so we could stay married and enjoy our wonderful life together. You'll still have me as your beloved wife, and we may have pleasure anytime you want. And no one will know. The difference, they'll always see you as my number one guy. She continued in a compassionate tone. I'll always be grateful for. I'm aware of your openness, and I'll do whatever you want. I just want some time with Eric. Not much, but just a bit. The rest of the time, it will keep making you happy. I was happy before you told me this, I said bitterly, but now I know I am. Just a stupid fool for my faithless wife and that jerk you work with. It's not like that, Jack. I began to walk away and she called out, "Wait, don't go, honey. We have to discuss this some more, please. There is nothing to discuss. Maria, you've given me an ultimatum. I have to decide if I want to accept it, and there's nothing for you to worry about." She said nothing will change between us, and I don't want you to think about anything. Aside from how much I love you and want you to be happy, and your affair right now. She looked down and whispered, "I can't do that yet, honey, and I can't stop right now because there's nothing else to talk about. This conversation is over. I've heard everything I can stand. You've told me how you feel, and nothing I say will convince you otherwise. You'll never believe anything you say again." I gave up trying to talk to someone who lies and cheats. I went into the den and turned on the TV. I didn't care what was on. I was still thinking about the difficult. During the conversation I had with her, I considered going to a hotel and staying away without telling her I was angry. I wanted to hurt her the way she had hurt me, but I knew leaving home and getting drunk wasn't my style, so I guess I am too rational or boring to do anything rash. I felt numb and tired. It felt like a nightmare. How could she do this to me? I watched television for another hour or so. There was a game on, but I couldn't tell you anything about it. I heard Maria leave. When she went out on the back deck, I assumed she opened and closed the sliding glass doors in the kitchen. Was calling someone and needed privacy, probably that jerk. She came in a while later and went into the den. I was on the recliner, so she couldn't sit next to me. She did move close and watch me for a while. "Are you all right, Jack?" she asked sweetly. I know this was a lot to accept, honey, and I want to help you. I glanced over and saw her flash me a weird smile. "You want to," she said, "Leighton talk some more? Or do you want to go to bed?" She asked. "What, do anything to make you feel better?" I really want. I was annoyed at being offered pity and intimacy to console my hurt feelings. It was so cliche. I just ignored her and went upstairs to bed. I was furious with my wife and thought about sleeping in the guest room, but decided she was the one at fault, so why should I leave my room? I got undressed in record time and jumped into bed. A few minutes later, Maria came into the room and saw I was already under the covers, so she went to our private bathroom and changed into a nightgown. She knew I liked it. She turned off the light, slid under the covers without a word, and began moving towards me. I knew she was unfaithful and had no intention of touching her. I turned on my side away from her and hoped she'd get the message, but she moved closer and tried to spoon me, reaching for my chest to turn me to her side. I pushed her hand away like, "Oh, come on, honey." Suddenly an image appeared in my head, a revolting image of my slender 45-year-old wife. Here, I saw an image of an old woman on Eric's bed. She was lying on her back and getting attention from him. I imagined her grabbing him and smiling at him as he took what was exclusively mine without moving. I pulled her hand off me and said, "Never again." "But, honey, I know you're upset. I just wanted to." I flipped over and glared at her. She was saying L by my angry expression came back from me, even in the dark. I'm sure she could sense my frustration. Of course I'm upset. I just found out I've been deceived for months. If you need company, So badly, go call Eric, I'm sure. Your young friend can take care of you. Maria was taken aback. I don't think she expected me to reject her like this. I glared at her. I looked at her for a few moments, then turned back to face the wall. Maria didn't say anything and didn't bother me anymore. I had a lot of trouble getting to sleep, and I know she did too the next morning. I was up before the alarm went off. I barely slept and was still bitter about the conversation the night before. Maria was in bed, but she wasn't. I took a quick shower, and when I came out, she was already gone. Maria had to be at work an hour before I did. I've always been an early riser. Even though I didn't have to go in early, I was usually up before her. And sometimes even fixed breakfast. That was before I knew she was seeing that guy. I dressed and clean. I got up and left the room as quickly as I could. When I came back downstairs, I saw Maria fixing breakfast in the kitchen. She said, "Good morning, Jack," and offered me bacon and eggs as well as toast. I ignored her and walked out of the house without even looking back. "Please wait for me," she called after me as I slammed the door. Got in my car and zoomed off down the street. At work, I tried to forget about my problems, but I kept thinking about her and that young guy, and I couldn't concentrate throughout the day. I got several calls from Maria, but I didn't answer, and her messages went to voicemail. I didn't bother listening to them. I deleted them. She sent me a few cute texts, but I deleted them too. I couldn't get her out of my mind. I made a few simple mistakes in some of the work I was reviewing, so I decided to take the afternoon off. I called up a lawyer for a consultation. He was an older guy, and he took me, and it didn't take long to realize that Maria's warnings about the divorce were true. I'd be left high and dry while she'd come out on top with a young lover to keep her company. I'd be left with a big financial headache supporting her. And since I'd never been unfaithful, I'd have no one to turn to for emotional support. I'd end up broke and alone, maybe even in a small one-bedroom apartment. The apartment was pretty run down, and I wasn't sure I'd be able to stay with her. She made it clear that she wanted physical attention, but it would be empty and driven by pity. It was obvious that this younger guy was interested in her in a way I never could be at my age. I just couldn't compete with a fit younger man in that area. Also, if I stayed in the marriage and ignored her cheating, the court would think I was okay with it. I could never claim adultery in a divorce proceeding. What made it even more daunting was trying to fight fire with fire. Basically, I had to remain married and have my own affair in a relationship contest with my wife. I knew I'd lose every time. There were plenty of guys who wanted to be with her, even guys as young as her. Eric was proof of that. He was 45 years old. Mariah is still fairly attractive with short dark hair, a trim body, and a pleasant personality. I'm an average-looking older guy with a slightly receding hairline and holding a little too much weight. I have a good job, and I'm okay looking for my age, but I know how many women want an older middle-class married boyfriend. Not many. I guess the contrast between our dating prospects was pretty depressing. She was still attractive, and I was not. After a frustrating day at the office, I went to the bar for dinner. I stayed away as late as I could, but I never got into the bar scene. It was pretty boring. I wanted to be home with my wife, sipping a beer and relaxing by the TV. I didn't want to be alone in a bar dousing my sorrows alone, surrounded by a bunch of lonely guys like me. Maria was already in bed. It wasn't that late, but I guess she just gave up on me getting home. Not that I cared. I woke up early after another difficult sleep. I left the house at dawn and went to a diner for breakfast. I drove around and did some window shopping, basically wasting as much time as I could. Then I went back home wondering if my unfaithful wife was there or out with that young man. It turned out she was home. She must have heard my car pull up, because when I got to the door, she opened it and welcomed me with a smile. She tried to kiss me, but I turned my head, so she hit my cheek. She looked surprised when I pulled away from her embrace and moved past her. I went into the den to avoid her for a while. When I came out, I found her in the kitchen. I went in to get a beer. Then I went to the living room and turned on the TV. She showed up a few minutes later with a glass of wine. Maria asked if I minded her joining me. I noticed she had changed. She was now wearing a thin tank top that fit tight to her and left her arms and shoulders bare. She was also wearing a pair of shorts. She was wearing tight shorts and a skimpy top. I could smell her perfume. I was sitting on the sofa this time. I moved to the side to give her the rest of the sofa. She sat right next to me during the TV show. Maria was getting more amorous. I knew the wine had made her a little high, maybe even amorous. She wasn't drunk when her head moved close to my neck. I picked that exact moment to say I needed to use the bathroom. I politely moved her back, got up and walked away. As I left the room, I saw her look at me funny. I was pretty much always available for her, so I ended up in the bathroom instead of going back to the living room. Though I went into the kitchen, she asked if the show was getting good. I said it wasn't right now, but I stayed in the kitchen for a while anyway when I thought it was long enough. I left the kitchen with a beer and went straight into the den, shutting the door behind me. Maria came back a few minutes later. She asked what I was doing. I said I was catching up on some stuff. She said she didn't want to watch the show. I said rather than oh okay. She was still standing there as I maintained my attention on the computer. When I didn't look at her, I could almost sense her frustration. I knew she was bewildered. After having a great dinner, I'm sure she anticipated there'd be a melting in the atmosphere. A minute or so later, I felt her hands on my shoulders. What are you looking at now? She said, staring at the computer I claimed to be looking at the screen, but I was actually reading at some documentation from an account I was working on. It was a financial spreadsheet. So I knew she wouldn't know what it was. I got sort of busy on Friday and didn't finish this. I told her I didn't think you'd mind if I missed the show. Oh, of course not. She shivered when she started rubbing my neck. She knew I like having my head stroked. She gave me a neck rub and made it as provocative as she could. Her hands were roaming around my neck and scratching my head a bit. I could smell the booze on her breath when she leaned down and kissed my head. I just ignored her. It took another 10 minutes for her to get the signal that I wasn't interested. Then she just moved away and went back to the living room. Please shut the door, she said as she pulled it closed behind her. I was relieved. After being Maria's colleague for so long, she still attracted me a lot. All the things she was doing were trying to make me interested, and it was succeeding, but I was determined to remain indifferent in her attractions. I had no intention of sharing them with another guy. It took me 3 hours to when I got upstairs to bed. I found her asleep. She was wearing a very stunning nightie with matching underwear. I guess she wanted to charm me in that tiny clothing. She planned to surprise me. However, she became tired from the booze and fell asleep on Sunday morning. I got up before Maria and once again ignored her all day. On Monday, her car wouldn't start, so I had to drop her off at work. She asked me to pick her up later in the day. I received approximately half a dozen calls from Maria. I knew she was frantic to tell me that she'd receive a lift home with her boyfriend, so I just ignored them. I left work early and was at her job before her last. After the workday ended, I waited for the folks to go. When I arrived at her office, she was shocked and I said pleasantly, "Hey honey, are you ready to go home?" And she gave me a sharp look. "I called you all day. Why didn't you call me back?" she asked. I was sorry. "I'm quite busy today. I wanted to inform you I've already scheduled a transport home," I replied. "Oh well, never mind. I'm here now. So let's go." At that point, a tall, athletic guy came into the room, and Eric, her lover, came in with dark hair and went comfortably towards my wife as if he expected her to come over and kiss him. I recognized him immediately, but I didn't pay any attention to him. But from a few feet away, he looked even younger than I remembered him, he was dressed more like a college frat boy than an adult, wearing sneakers, shorts, and a t-shirt, wearing a top that displayed his muscular arms and legs. He was a bit of a jerk, but he was brilliant at his job. I could understand Maria's attraction to him because he was fit and healthy. Maria's eyes widened when he came. Eric looked a little bewildered. "Oh, Eric," she said, "I was just telling Jack that I already have a ride home." I kept my cool because I knew there was a chance he'd be there. He looked surprised to see me when he saw me and smiled, but it was a bit of a funny smile. He glanced from me to my wife. "Oh, hello," he said, offering his hand. "My name is Eric Johnson." Ignoring it and responding coolly, "Yeah, I know who you are." I was trying to defuse the situation. Maria squeaked, "Eric, this is Jack, my husband. I believe you met once before." And the young man is bewildered. His expression softened slightly as he recognized me. "Oh, sure, Jack. I remember you. It's great to see you again." "Sure. I remember we met at a corporate function a few months ago, and I've heard a lot of positive things about you. Maria told me you're a terrific person, but I'm not sure whether I'd go that far." I glanced at my wife, who appeared to be holding her breath. "Leighton, get out of here," I muttered, twisting my nose as if the stench bothered. Maria began gathering her belongings as Eric turned to him, clearly detecting the tension in the room. "Everything is good," I said, my eyes fixated on Maria as she frantically grabbed her luggage. "Thank you." Eric offered to give me a ride, "But I think I'll go with Jack, no problem," Eric said, but he didn't sound. He gave a tiny nod and left, leaving Maria and me alone in my head. When we reached home, I didn't wait for her to get out of the car before I started thinking about what to do next. She followed me inside, her stride speeding to keep up with Jack. "We need to talk," she remarked as soon as we got inside. "No, Maria," I said, turning to face her. "I've heard enough. You made your bed now. Lie in it, but Jack, please just listen. I don't need to hear any more excuses, and I've heard enough of yours. Lies and justifications you believe you can have it both ways, but that's not how this works." She looked at. Her eyes pleaded with Jack. "I love you, and I don't want to lose you. That is not the... You stated you needed time to examine your feelings. Now it's my turn, Jack. I'm done, Maria. Please don't do this," she implored, tears welling up in her eyes. Said forcefully, "I can't stay married to someone who disrespects me like this. I'm moving out." Her eyes widened in surprise. "Well, you can't simply leave, watch me," I muttered, moving away from her. I went upstairs and began packing a bag. Followed me, imploring and screaming, but I ignored her. I packed enough clothes for a few days and grabbed my essentials. When I was done, I headed back downstairs. Maria was immediately behind me. "Jack, please," she sobbed, "we can figure this out. I promised to quit seeing Eric, but it's too late." I left the house. I slammed the door behind me, got into my car, and drove away without looking back. I had no idea where I was heading, but I didn't know what to do. But I knew I couldn't stay with an unfaithful wife. I went to a motel and I spent the next few days figuring out my future steps, so I contacted a lawyer and began the process of filing for divorce. I looked into finding a new home to live. It was a terrible and tough period, but I knew it was I couldn't stay in a marriage predicated on lies and treachery. Maria called and texted me often, but I ignored her. I wanted room to recover and move on. I knew it would take time, but I was determined to rebuild my life. Without her, I deserved something more than a wife who I couldn't accept cheating on me. I deserved someone who would love and respect me. As the days became weeks, I concentrated on myself and my future. I reconnected with old acquaintances, took up new activities, and began to feel like myself again. Mariah's treachery was still, but it was becoming a part of my past, not my present. I realized that remaining with Maria would only. I was moving forward, and leaving her was the wisest decision I could have taken to avoid prolonging the anguish and bitterness. Determined to make a new and brighter life for myself. What would you do if you discovered your husband was living? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more compelling real life stories. See you in the next video.